In a world that often feels chaotic and disconnected, a return to classical is a must. From the wisdom of the philosophers to the profound insights of poets, the Greeks understood something fundamental about existence, about ourselves, and about the divine woven into the very fabric of reality. This video is a collection of timeless wisdom that should resonate deeply with our modern lives. And I say should because we live in very strange times. Everything in nature contains something divine. Aristotle. This line from Aristotle reveals a truth that is often forgotten, that the divine is not separate from the world, but infused with it. To the Greeks, the divine wasn't some jealous, bearded feature in the sky handing out 10 strict commandments and threatening eternal punishment to disobedient souls. Instead, at Delphi, the spiritual heart of ancient Greece, there were 147 short maxims carved at the entrance. They were not commandments, not threats, but gentle, wise reminders, advice for self-awareness and inner harmony. Unlike fear-based doctrines, Greek wisdom didn't separate humans from the divine. It invited them to discover the divine within the world and within themselves. From the tiniest insect to the spirals of the galaxies, from the sea tides to your own heartbeat, everything follows a sacred order. Nature is not in chaos. It moves with rhythm, with balance and harmony. And within that harmony, the sacred becomes visible. So if you are searching for the divine, maybe stop looking for it up there and start noticing what's right here, in the wind, in the stars, in your breath, because the divine never left. It is woven into the very fabric of existence. Have you ever thought of the world not as a machine, but as a living, breathing being, and us, not rulers of it, but cells within it? Pythagoras was the first among the Greeks to call the totality of things cosmos, because of the order within it all. In Greek, the word cosmos doesn't just mean word. It comes from the verb kosmeo, to arrange, to bring it into order, to adorn. And from the same root comes the Greek word kosmima, jewel, because the world, the cosmos, is a jewel. It's an ornament of harmony, of structure and beauty. It's not a chaotic accident, but a living expression of order. Look at it. And maybe that's how we should treat it, with the care and reverence we show to a precious gem. There are infinite worlds, both born and perishable. Democritus. Over 2,000 years ago, Democritus envisioned a cosmos of countless worlds, created and destroyed in endless cycles. And today modern physics explores the multiverse theory and the idea that our universe may be just one of the many, each with its own birth, evolution and death. We live in an era where ancient philosophy is being confirmed experimentally and scientifically for those who have the eyes to see it. Nothing comes from what does not exist, and nothing is destroyed into non-being. Democritus. This is ancient atomic theory, 2,500 years ago. Democritus tells us that matter doesn't come from nowhere and it doesn't disappear into nothing. It transforms. And modern physics agrees. Energy is never lost. Atoms reorganize and information is conserved. The universe constantly recycles itself. But here's what's often forgotten. This wasn't just science, it was also philosophy, and was a worldview. Everything is connected, not only materially, but meaningfully. What dies becomes something else. So when you die, do you truly vanish, or are you simply rearranged? Maybe death isn't an end, and maybe it's just the universe reshaping you. The ancients saw this unity, but today we've split things apart. We have religion, often irrational and based on fear, And we have science, increasingly powerful, but totally detached from ethics. So where does that lead? As Plato said in Maxims, every science separated from justice and virtue is mere cunning, not wisdom. What we call knowledge today often lacks soul, and what we call progress often lacks direction. That's the crisis of our time. A world of information, but starving for meaning. Technology without wisdom. Data without conscience. And a culture that forgot the sacred order that once held it all together. The ancient Greeks already understood this. They didn't separate physics from philosophy or science from the soul. They saw life and death as part of a larger, greater harmony. Now, science is just beginning to remember what philosophy never forgot. Wake up before you die. Everyone lives life as if they had just arrived. Epictetus. Life is like an airport, arrivals and departures, and we forget how short the stay really is. What do we do between landing and takeoff? Do we seize life by the hair or settle for a boring layover? As Frank Zappa put it, if you end up with a boring, miserable life because you listen to your mom, your dad, and your teacher, your priest, or some guy on the television telling you how to do your shit, then you deserve it. Don't just pass life, we need to live life. Oh, my dear soul, do not strive for an immortal life, but draw in all the power you can from the real, lived one. Pindar. What does it truly mean to live? The soul often longs for immortality, not always in the literal sense of eternal life, but in the hope of escaping pain, uncertainty, and death. That longing is what many religions have promised to satisfy. And today, it's also one of the core promises of transhumanism. It's a modern attempt to create a new religion without gods, offering digital immortality instead of inner transformation and alignment with the cosmos. It's a salvation not through virtue, but through code. But whether religious or technological, the message is the same. Just believe or just comply, and you will be saved. But what if belief is not enough? What if real salvation has nothing to do with dogma or data, but everything to do with the quality of your own awareness? Today, many people place their hopes in a better afterlife or in technological progress while doing almost nothing to transform themselves. They confess, they feel guilt, they ask for forgiveness, or they ask ChatGPT. But they never truly observe themselves. They never learn how they work, how things work inside them. They forget that the real problem is not the guilt after the act, but the unconsciousness that led to the act in the first place. And that brings us back to a word that has been deeply misunderstood. Metanoia, or in English, metanoia. The original Greek meaning of metanoia, it's not confession or remorse. It comes from meta, beyond or after, and nous, which is mind, awareness. Meta plus nous, it's a shift of mind, a change in perception. Metanoia means to turn the mind, turn the consciousness, to change the direction of your inner gaze, to reorient your consciousness through understanding, not through shame, not through rituals, but through insight. Because the human mind doesn't change through fear or doctrines or whatever. It changes only through clarity. This is what Greek thought invites us to, not to escape life, but to enter it fully, to draw strength from presence, from experience, and from inner honesty. What can guide us through this? I mentioned this in another video, but the Greek word nous, usually translated as mind, means far more. It refers to pure perception, essence, the eye of consciousness within you. But to reach it, we must turn inward and we must confront our programming, our shadows, our illusions. As Carl Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And this is not easy, it is not glamorous, it's not popular, but it's the only way to become free. And maybe, just maybe, it's how we touch a different kind of immortality. Not by living forever, but by finally living truthfully. Better to die once than to suffer every day. Aeschylus. This line from the father of tragedy isn't about glorifying death, it's a wake-up call. It's about the heavy cost of a life unlived, a life ruled by fear, routine, or resignation. In modern terms, would you rather drift in numbness, just getting by, or take the courageous leap, even if it feels like ego death, towards truth, freedom, and meaning? Because sometimes what needs to die isn't the body, it's the false self, the mask we built from fear, the identity that it's shaped by expectation, the mechanical persona that keeps us small. Real life begins where fear ends, and as the Stoics would say, death is not the worst thing, living in chains is. Some weak-hearted mortals, defeated by the effort of living, fall in love with death. Agathon. Why do so many people fall into addiction? Why do depression, apathy, or self-destruction feel like the only way out for so many? Because nobody ever taught them what they are truly made of. Nobody showed them that they carry within them something great and something powerful. We live in a culture that doesn't truly educate us. It trains us to seek approval, but not to know ourselves. To consume, but not to create. To obey, but not to think. To perform roles, but never ask, who am I really? So when life gets hard, as it always does, most people have no foundation to go through it. No one ever showed them that it's not their fault. No one told them that strength isn't something you are born with, it's something you build. And so they collapse into escape. Not physical death, but emotional and spiritual numbness. And it's not a sudden thing. It's a slow fade. It's a quiet giving up that takes years and years and years. But living never happens automatically. What no one tells us is that living is an art. And like all true art, it requires effort. It requires effort, it requires mistakes, it requires patience, and it requires courage. As Aristotle said, the soul uses the body as its tool, like an artist uses instruments to shape life. To live well means to create yourself, to chip away at what it's false, and to take the raw material of your wounds and give it a shape, give it a form. And yes, that takes energy, and yes, it's difficult. But to avoid the effort is to avoid becoming who you really are. To run from the inner work is to abandon your own soul. The masterpiece you were meant to become cannot be outsourced, ever. You must shape it with your own hands. And if no one ever told you this, let this be the moment you hear it. You are not a broken thing. No one is broken. You are just unfinished. And you matter, and we all matter. Sleep and death are twin brothers, Homer. This ties directly into the same truth. In ancient Greek, the word hypnos, sleep, comes from hypo, under, and nous, mind or higher consciousness. I mentioned this also in one of my previous videos. So philosophically, sleep means a state beneath conscious awareness. When we live without self-examination and trapped inside beliefs, conditioning, and routines, are we truly alive? Or are we simply sleepwalking through life? Because if sleep and death are twins, then living unconsciously is already a kind of death. We need to wake up, not just from our bed, but from our programming. The real self, body, soul, mind. Whatever I am, it is made of flesh and spirit and the mind that governs them. Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that we are very complex beings, and not just physical bodies, but also spirit and mind. The mind is the leader, the conductor of the whole orchestra, and to live well is to bring harmony between body, spirit, and mind. And when the mind rules wisely, the whole self thrives. And this speaks straight to modern life. We need to balance our inner world. And once we do that, what we will find is strength and peace. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Epictetus. Identity is shaped through action. First decide who you want to become. That choice isn't up to the world, it's up to you. And your actions must reflect that decision. Wanting is not enough, you must live accordingly. And through this process, you become the best version of yourself. Identity isn't fixed, it's forged by your will and how you face life. Because if you don't know who you are, someone else will come to decide it for you. Moral compass, not belief, but conscience. For all mortals, conscience is a god, Menander. This again points us to the one and only direction. Conscience is the highest authority. It's not fear, it's not blind obedience. But that inner voice, that the voice of conscience, knows deep down what is right. Odysseas, a Nobel Prize winning poet and one of Greece's modern philosophers, put it very plainly. The material world is just a pile of raw materials. Whether it becomes heaven or hell depends on whether we are good or bad architects. Conscience is the God within. It's not out there. It's in you, in me, in everyone, and it shapes the world we live in. What is shameful, whether it appears so or not. Antisthenes. Here Antisthenes speaks of objective truth, right and wrong, just and unjust. They do not depend on opinion or appearance. Something is not good simply because it seems good, and in an age ruled by cognitive dissonance, where perception often overrides truth and convenience masks injustice, this quote reminds us that reality will not bend to any belief, and morality doesn't change with any fashion. And again, the return to classical education is not some kind of weird nostalgia. It is a necessity, because without roots in truth, we're going to end up left drifting in illusion. Do not fight against your life. Delphic Maxim. This maxim doesn't ask us to surrender to fate. It asks us to stop seeing life as an enemy. Because what if life isn't against you? What if life is responding to you through every difficulty, through every delay? And most people today resist their lives without even noticing. They kind of fight reality with a constant comparison, with complaints and with blame. But life, in its deepest form, It is not an obstacle, it is a mirror, and it reflects exactly what we need to face in order to grow. Every challenge we face, it is also an invitation. It's like when you go to the gym, you have to lift weights. It's not punishment, it's an opportunity, and something uncomfortable might be a doorway into a deeper version of yourself. And the problem is that we were never taught to read this language of life. We were always trained to fix things, to avoid, to escape, and never listen. But if you stop and observe carefully, you'll see that the very thing you call problem might be a teacher in disguise. It's a fire meant to burn away illusion, not to destroy you. The word crisis, it's from the verb, the word crisis from the verb krino, to judge. I am in a difficult situation, what do? I sit down and I try to figure out what's the best solution out of it. But on the news we hear crisis, crisis, crisis. Nope, that's what crisis is. It's an opportunity. To accept your life, it doesn't mean passive resignation. It means entering into alignment so that you can begin to transform it, not through resistance, through understanding. Because nothing can truly change until you stop fighting with everything and start listening. This world profits from your inner war, but the moment you stop being at war with yourself, you become unpredictable, uncontrollable, and fully alive. So the real question is not why is this happening to me, oh my God, etc., 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 but what is this trying to show me? That's the moment life stops being some kind of weird prison and it becomes not just a path, it becomes a game. The soul comes to the underworld carrying nothing else but its education and upbringing, Plato. This is a reminder of a universal truth. When we die or shift into another state, we don't carry our possessions, our titles, or our image. We carry only what we've truly become, our habits, our awareness, and our inner character. The Tibetan Book of the Dead says something similar, that the state of your mind at the moment of death shapes what comes next. In other words, your soul doesn't follow your bank account, it follows your vibration. At the end, like the old saying goes, all the pieces of the Monopoly game will go back into the box. Facing darkness with light. Good and evil do not exist separately. They are mixed together. Euripides. This reminds the Taoist yin and yang. Darkness and light are not enemies, they coexist. And the question is not which side you are on, but from where do you actually see the whole? Our perception of life, of good and bad, depends on the level of our awareness. When we react, we divide. When we observe, we begin to see the pattern, not just the pieces. And in truth, there is no pure good or evil in isolation. There is a blend, a dynamic tension, and a cosmic balance. And wisdom is not picking sides. Wisdom is standing at the center, seeing both and acting consciously. Evil does not touch or cure evil. Ancient Greek proverb. You cannot heal poison with more poison, and you cannot fix injustice with revenge. And darkness does not dispel darkness. This proverb reminds us that you become what you fight, unless you fight differently. When we respond to harm with more harm, we fuel the same fire. True strength is not retaliation, but transformation. And to break the chain of suffering, someone must step out of it. What you carry into the world is what you help the world to become. No evil is easily destroyed. Ancient Greek proverb. Some evils are not external. They are habits, fears, desires, and subtle forces that live inside us. And this is where self-observation begins. What thoughts dominate me? What reactions rule me without my consent? Which emotions waste my energy instead of channeling it into creation? The deep state must first be broken within our own selves. Before we point to any hidden systems out there, we must first dismantle the invisible mechanisms in here. The internal bureaucracy of conditioning, of trauma and ego. True freedom doesn't come from overthrowing outer powers, but by reclaiming inner authority. Revolution begins within, seeing clearly the mind above the fog. There is one good, knowledge, and only one evil, ignorance, Socrates. The Greek word episteme, often translated as knowledge or science, holds a deeper meaning than the modern term science. It means to stand over something, to observe it from above, from a higher perspective, and not just intellectually, but with care, responsibility, and holistic understanding. Epistatis in Greek is caretaker as well. Episteme is science, epistatis is caretaker. For Socrates, ignorance was the root of all harm, and knowledge is the path to the good life. Superstitions, once brought to a mathematical clarity, lead us to a deeper understanding of the world, Odysseas elitis. What begins as prejudice or belief, if we enter the process of examining it, filtering it, and purifying it, it can, with mathematical precision, become a tool for understanding. Just as mathematics transforms chaos into order, so too can superstitions, once they reach a state of clarity, stripped away of fear, reveal to us the very structures of reality. Elitis sees poetry as a bridge between myth and the very truth of the universe, as the very dialectical process between the human being and the cosmos. The road to Hades is easy. You go there with your eyes closed. Vias of Priene. In Plato's Cratylus, Socrates explains the name Hades, Aedes, as coming from alpha, without, and idin, to see, meaning the unseen. And the descent into Hades is easy. It requires no effort. You just stop seeing, you stop questioning, you let life carry you unconsciously, and without even noticing, you have already entered the unseen realm. But Hades is also called Pluton, from Plutos, meaning wealth. Because when we start observing ourselves, when what was unconscious begins to rise into awareness, it transforms, and then it becomes gold, the raw material of the soul, which is refined through consciousness. And this is why the journey out of Hades, it is not just about escaping death, it's about awakening. Learning to navigate the stormy sea of emotions and thoughts, which is the kingdom of Poseidon, right here and now, and rising into clarity and alignment, which is the kingdom of Zeus, where your thoughts, emotions, and actions become one. Action over theory. What cannot be untied must be cut. Alexander the Great. Faced with the Gordian knot, Alexander didn't seek endless analysis, and this phrase stands as a symbol of decisiveness. When logic can't untangle a situation, boldness is required, action, even rupture. And the story tells us, don't stay trapped in endless problems, don't overthink it, make it a cut and forge a new path. Epilogue. The choice is yours. I believe that death is nothing but the separation of two things, the soul and the body. Plato. Is death truly an end or just a transition? All ancient philosophies agreed on one thing: death is not the final stop. It is a passage, a transformation, it is not annihilation. The soul, according to Plato and many other philosophers, does not perish. It lives, and in his words, death is simply the separation of soul and body. That's all. The modern world fears death because it sees only the material. But the ancients knew more. They spoke of the soul as something real, enduring, and divine. So perhaps we don't really die, we just shift, and who we are at the core continues. And all of these ancient quotes, except Epictetus, who is a modern poet, though separate by millennia, offer a great roadmap for navigating the complexities of our modern life. They are here to remind us that truth, purpose, and the divine are not distant concepts, but woven into the fabric of our lives and waiting to be discovered. And we are all, every single one of us, molecules in the body of the world. And it's up to us to choose. Will we become part of the healing or the tumor? Thank you very much. Bye.